Okay, so this is continuing almost directly on from the previous stream. I did a couple of git commits, pushed them, so you can see the changes up on GitHub. So the next thing we're going to try and do is get some more of these life forms. I call them life forms. Yellow triangle. Get some more of these to appear. Ideally, I don't know, each frame or so many times a second. I think that's the next step, is drawing more of these on the fly, not just at the beginning. And then presume once we can draw them, we can probably remove them, and then we can build our logic engine for them multiplying and dying off. So turns out it's actually not that simple. One of the reasons it's been quite a while since the last video, I know I just did a video, but before sorting out the camera perspective, one of the reasons I took so much time between videos was really trying to figure out how to get this to work. It turns out we need another system, so we can do that. So we've got a camera movement system at the moment in here, and this takes keyboard input. It's got a run function, and it pulls in data that it needs. So it needs to be able to read the camera and read named objects. So, e.g., is this the main camera? And then transform. So transform. That's a good point actually. Why does it need transform? Oh, there we go. We're moving things around. So it needs these things, and we need another one of these. So I might just do the old copy and paste. Call it life movement. Movement doesn't seem quite right. They're not really moving. They kind of exist in a spot, or they don't. That's it, right? They exist in a spot, or they don't. Just call it life. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so we've now got a copy of life that's exactly the same as camera movement. Now, I'm tempted to use a new feature of my mouse and keyboard, which is to copy some of the stuff that I've already tested out straight into here, rather than either do a montage of me typing it out or doing it in real time in this, in the video. I think you'll be bored seeing both. Should just be able to move the mouse over to this side. Yeah, and then it appears on my other machine. Okay, so I'm going to highlight a bunch of that. I'm going to click copy. Done. Now I'm going to move back to the other screen here, and I want to paste over the top of this. Good. Okay, so this is all the stuff that we needed. Some of it is very similar to what we had before. We can jump between camera movement and see that. So named, time, transform was stuff that we needed before. ECS must have needed for something. We needed input before, for the keyboard, detecting which buttons were down to decide whether we move. And we needed the camera. This time around, we don't need the camera. We don't need the keyboard input. We still need some of the core stuff. Apparently, we still need ECS. I say apparently is somehow surprising, but yeah, we still need ECS. And then yeah, there's some stuff that we need for reading the assets. And then I've included a bunch of stuff here for textures and materials and meshes and colors and all sorts. And the reason for this is because we're drawing a new object. We're drawing a new life form, and they need all of these things. That's how we draw the object. If I'll just click back to main. In here somewhere. Oh, I've minimized them. Yeah, when we draw the life forms the first time round, when we first load the game. You can see, yeah, we're using mesh, we're using textures, we're using materials. We're setting the size of these things, and then we're actually drawing them in a 5x5 grid, 5x5x5 grid. So fine, that kind of explains why we needed that stuff for drawing. And yeah, this will become apparent as well in a minute. So that's the first thing that we need. The second thing we're going to need, I'm just going to copy over. And I'm going to think at this point, I'm just going to get rid of it. Now paste here. Save that. So now, whereas before we have a camera movement system, now we're creating a life form system. I think I'm going to get rid of form. It's just life. It's just the life system. Oh, mouse has got a bit upset. I haven't left the game running again, have I? Yeah, so I've renamed that the life system. And this too. And what this is saying is we're going to want to do something with the entities. Now these are our life forms. That's what we're going to need. We're going to read from asset storage, something to do with meshes. We're going to read from, I don't know what lazy update is. I know I needed it. I can't remember why right this second. We're going to read from named storage, probably in a minute, to check that, you know, the entity that we're wanting to update is actually a life form. We can check the name of it and then perform some action on it if it is a life form as opposed to a camera or something else in our world. That's for reading mesh handles, which I think we'll need if we're creating new life. And transform is probably because, in fact, that's definitely because we're going to want to move. We're not going to draw a life form in the exact same place as a previous life form. We want to move where we're going to, you know, create them. That makes sense. And then the system, like the camera system, has a run function, and that will run, I think, every single frame. And my mouse has disappeared again. What is going on? It's back. It's back. Save. So yeah, this run function will run, as I said, I think every single frame. Scroll over here, see what we end up with. Yep, that's worked. So now I can copy a whole bunch of stuff. What's going on here? So we've got total entities, which takes these number of the entity's object. I assume it's an object. Joins them. And then counts them, and that will tell us, yeah, there's 25 of them, or yeah, it should be 25 to begin with. 555. No. Yes. No. What? Or is it a 4x4 grid? 125 of them. Let's run this thing. Hang on. Let's just see if this will run. Is it 4x4 or 5x5? Oh, it's 4x4. Okay, so we've got 64 of them, not 125. So yeah, so to begin with, we'll have 64, and then as that number increases, as we draw some new ones, we're going to, yeah, you know what, that, I'm not sure. That looks like it's debug. Maybe we're just trying to check that something equals something a bit further down the line. We'll see why we're counting seemingly each entity that we go through in a minute. We're just adding one for each entity that we loop over. Then yes, so for each entity that we loop over, we get the corresponding mesh and its name, and any transforms applied to it, which are set here as these 4 useful variables. And then yeah, we're checking to make sure that the name of the entity that we're looping over, because we have access to everything in the world, not necessarily just the stuff that we want. We're just checking that, yeah, it is actually called a life form. And this is so we don't, when we come to perform an action inside this if statement, this is to make sure we don't make a change to like the camera or something, which would also come up in that loop. And you can see here that when we create entities, we're not giving them a name. Really? I would have thought we'd have given them a name. Okay, we might need to fix that in a minute. Let's see if that is a problem when we get there. I mean, I think it will be, but we shall see. Okay, I'm going to go over to the screen again. I'm going to bring some debug across. Yeah, I'm going to bring some debug across. Maybe that will make a bit more sense. So within here, within the run function, there we go. Within the run function, I'm going to paste some debug. So we should see that the total of life forms. So I think the reason this is coming out is because we'd expect these two numbers to be different, because total entities initially might include things like cameras. I think that's why I put that in there when I was working on this. But we'll leave it in there. We can remove the debug when we know we're done with it. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now if we come over here, so within this if statement, oh wow, this isn't getting old at all. There we go. There we go. Right, it's letting me copy and paste now. So I've just done a few things. So that I don't think we actually need. Now that I've put that in, we can get rid of that for the moment. So what are we doing? So we create a new transform from the existing transform. So as this loops through each object in our world, if we are currently reading the one of the 64 life forms, because it's going to loop through every object and we only want to do things that involve the life, then it will take the current position in the world of this life form and it's going to create a transform that's moving, I guess that's 15 units of measurement into the z-axis, or negatively into the z-axis. So that will be useful if we want to draw an object next to the object we're currently reading, or next to the life we're currently reading. Then what are we doing? We are loading a mesh. I know that's not going to work. Not what we need. We just need tetra. So this is going to read the tetra mesh, the same mesh that we're using for our existing life, and we're going to make them red. So the new ones will be red. The existing ones will be yellow. The new ones will be red, which is 1.0 on the red, none on the green, none on the blue, and we need this to be opaque so we can actually see it. Then we load a default material, which is just whatever the first material it finds in the world. World.resource material defaults. Actually I say that, I'm not quite sure that's true, but it's reading the first material from world default list. Don't know. Anyway, we end up with the default material. And then we create a color, which is a combination of the literal color red and what the material is. And as we're using a default material, doesn't really matter. That is irrelevant. I don't know what we need that for. And then we're creating a new entity. We're giving it a name. So in this case, we're going to call it life form, and then we're giving it an X. Wow, this is not very pleasant at all, is it? This is horrible. No, I don't like this. Let's fix this. Let's just fix this right now. Let translation equal this. Make this a bit easier to read. Look. This could be better still, but at least this all fits on the screen now. Okay, so I don't think there's any double dots or anything. No, it still compiles. We still got a green tick next to our green arrow next to our compile down here. Compile status rather. So we're creating a new entity. We're giving it a name, which is life form, and then the X, the Y, and the Z value, so that we know, where it is in the world. We are giving it a mesh, i.e. we're giving it an actual shape. We're giving it a color for that shape, which we already said is a mixture of an actual color and the material. And then we're moving it in the world to where it should be. So we've got transform 2. Not very well named, is it? I'm going to rename that. Yeah. I think we should call that transform new life. Otherwise, transform 2, what's that, a sequel? It's not very useful. There, okay. To do this line may be superfluous. Great, get rid of it. Didn't like it anyway. Okay, so now if we were to run this, in theory, I don't think it will work first time because I can. In fact, I know it won't work first time because we haven't actually told the rest of the code base about this new file we've added. So in theory, this would. There's some extra logic going on here. So for each of the life forms it comes across, if it's not the if it's the first life form, so this won't run for all 64 of the life forms. If it's the first life form, or total entities minus entities count is less than 3, or it's one of the last life forms, then it will draw an additional bit of life. So I think that's so it doesn't replicate the entire 64 grid, the entire grid of 64 life each time. So I suspect this is probably gonna just draw maybe a line of life or a couple of lines of life in a particular direction infinitely, probably until my computer runs out of memory and crashes. Okay, so I think I've spoken. Yeah, I think I've spoken through everything that's going on here. This debug, we will find out what that is in a minute. So if I cargo run this, I know that this is not going to make any difference. Nothing's going to change because we haven't told. We have not told our game about this new file. We've got camera movement, we've got life, so I need to change mod.rs and add life to it first of all. So I think, now it's got some opinions on things that aren't very good. Returns a copy of the value. What's the issue? The warning. Redundant clone. Why is it redundant? I mean, I totally believe you. You're the compiler. Is this creates an owned instance? Is this loads of warning? The issue here. Oh, we don't use mesh storage. Entities. So get rid of that. Get rid of that. Is that what you're? Is that going to make it a bit happier? Okay. We never use entity either. There's loads of stuff that we don't do. Okay, let's run this, and then we'll come back to tidying this up. Code is clearly not in the best shape. What's going on? Nothing. Nothing's going on. It's a bit slow there to register my keyboard inputs, but I think that's just my key. Yeah, nothing's changed. Oh, you know what else? Within main, somewhere in here, we set up the camera movement system. So if I search for movement, I don't think that's it. Oh, I could be wrong. Okay, so yeah, dispatcher. So we have a dispatcher with. So what do we do with this? Can we? This is not a good idea generally to just blindly copy and paste like this. But I think that will work. Not found in life. So we've got life and then we've got life system. Did I not name something correctly? So if I go into camera movement, does anything mention camera underscore movement in here? Camera underscore? No. Excuse me. Camera movement, camera movement. Life system, which is in a lowercase l file life. And we've included it in the mod. Oh, you know what? Better if I go back to main.rs, I better have to include it up here. Use create systems camera movement. There we go. So actually it's also now going to need to include life. Let's try running that, see what happens. If it works first time, I'm going to be quite impressed. I know I've copied and pasted stuff across, but even so, to make a few changes. Okay, we're spitting out loads of debug, 0 and 66. And nothing at all is happening. Okay, so that tells us that, oh, I'm in the wrong file. That's what that tells us. No, this tells us, this debug tells us that it's running this, and it's running it at quite a pace. So those are inside those are inside run, but we don't have any debug to say if it's going into here. And I've got a feeling, because it says number of life forms 0 on that debug, number of life forms 0, so that's entities count. If it was going into this for loop, entities count would immediately equal 1. 0 would go up and equal 1. There's no way it's, yeah, so it's not even going into this for loop. Count number of life forms, number of life forms 0. Well, that I was not expecting. Entity, mesh handle, name and transform. So I did change something up here. I took this out, didn't I? And I can't remember what it was called. I'm going to call it asset storage just for want of a better variable. But let me just put that back in. I really can't see. Can't see that being the problem. I just want to undo something that I know that I changed just to rule it out. No, we're still getting that 0 and 66. And if I zoom out, nothing's changed. But we can zoom out really far now, thanks to our work in the previous episode. Previous session. Alright, well, I didn't really expect this to not work at all. Why would it not go into this for loop? Entity, handle, name, transform, entities, mesh handles, names, transforms. Let's I mean, this is a silly thing to do, but let's just change that. If I do cargo run, does it just come out with 66 and 7? I'm sure it will. It isn't really telling us anything. Yeah, that's fine. 66 and 7. Not that then. Okay, well, we've ruled out this asset storage thing as a problem. That problem. We don't need the mesh thing, so let's just get rid of that. Before entity, mesh handle, name and transform in these 4 objects. 4 things. Maybe. Okay, so total life form 66. So let's add some more debug. Why don't we add some more print lines, but include some other stuff, right? So we've got the total entities, which is based on this line. And sorry, this is going to be slightly lazy in that we've got some chained functions going on here, but how many mesh handles have we got? Total of mesh handles. How many names have we got? Oh, you know what? I've just realised. I bet it's names. I think earlier in this session, I remember commenting that something wasn't named. Ah, that's what it. Yeah, okay. I'm 90% sure it's that. Let's run this just to see what debug we get. I might just kill it immediately. Starts running. Oh, it won't let me. I have to click this button. Fine. So total mesh handles is 64. Then, yeah, look at this. Curious, there's only 64 mesh handles, but that probably makes sense actually, because there'll be some stuff like the camera that won't have a mesh handle. And I bet the only thing that's named is the camera. So that's the problem, right? So this will only work if there's, yeah, I'm going to say it'll only work if there's the same number of things in each, but that's not true. It'll only work if there's names, handles, transforms and life forms all on the same object. So all of these things have to exist on an object for it to be brought into this loop. So what am I saying? I am saying that we need to go back here. We need to find where we're creating our new life forms, which is here. And we probably need to add a name. I can't remember the name of the function, but I think it's like named or name. It is named. That is the correct function. And we could we go back to life here. When we're creating it here, oh look, it's called named. We could just use this. We'll have to modify it slightly because this translation thing might not be readily available. Or we could just use XYZ. Life form. So what are we doing with X? So set translation. Life form size times X. I think so. I was momentarily trying to decide how to get the information into the name. We don't need it at the moment, but it just feels like it'd be good debug later on. Actually, let's just copy the translation line because it's going to be useful. We can grab transform. Yeah, I think that should be good. So if we do cargo run now, pretty confident this will work. Much more confident than I was a minute ago anyway. If it does work, this has gone reasonably well because we've had to debug stuff, had to figure out stuff on. Oh, well, that looks very promising. Okay, so there's one randomly down here, which I think we can explain in a minute. I think I might have mentioned what I think that could be. What's going on with debug? Because we're probably, oh my days, there's 10,000 10,000 of these already. Oh, it is struggling. 12,000. Frame rate's really not doing so good. Okay, and can you see that? I've taken my hands off the keyboard. That's now just slowly drawing them into the infinity. All right, well that's something. Now we just need to make sure that there's now 1,900 of these things. Okay, I'm going to close this because I don't know what the RAM usage is going to be like. Okay, is it worth us committing things? I realize it's a huge chunk of code. As far as commits go, this is not clean at all, but this might be our largest commit. Debating. Do we make this the worst commit ever? I think I'm going to make it the worst commit in the interest of speed. So let's have a look, see what we've got going on here. Git status. I'm just going to move this over here. There we go. It's easier to find. I always find it odd when you've got one terminal just slightly off from the other. If I take my eyes off the screen for a second and come back, brain gets confused. Yeah, so we've added. So we need to do git add for the new system that we've just created. Great. Let's have a look at git diff. So actually, you know what? This is a commit by itself. That could be a commit by itself. That doesn't need to be part of this huge other commit. What is that doing in there? That's a Windows line ending. Why have we got a Windows line ending? Our mod file. Thanks. Linux. Try that again. Git diff. Yeah, that's better. We had that weird Windows line ending, and now we don't. I'm gonna check the other files. Is this? Yes, that's the right line ending. That's the right line ending, but the mod one wasn't. Oh, very odd. It's fine. Fixed now. Yeah, so git status, git add, basically everything in source. Yeah, fine. Git diff main. Nope. Hang on, I just said I wasn't going to do this as a giant commit, and then I've just proceeded to do this as a giant commit. You know, it's fine. It's fine. It's going in as a giant commit. Git commit, fine. You know things are fine when I say fine 35 times. That's how you know. Added life system. Huge commit. Bad Craig. And then we can push that up. And for anyone that's following along, that code will just be appearing on GitHub now. I think, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff to improve here. So this is basically saying the clone doesn't matter. You don't need the clone, right? Yes, but we do need to follow syntax rules. There we go. And curiously, this is fine with it. It's owned data. So what if I get rid of that? Are you saying that you're happy to do a comparison? No. No implementation for string equals string. Fine. So if I do that, then it's happy. Great. For whatever reason, entity and mesh handle are not used, but I feel like want to get rid of that. I do want to get rid of this, however. That can go. And if this runs, then we'll do a git commit minus p. Yeah, it runs. I can still move. Yeah, all good, all good. So git commit minus. Really struggles sometimes after the game's been running. There we go. Oh, wrong window. Wrong window. Commit minus p. I think I want to break that up actually into different commits. Git commit partial. Partial. Yeah, probably Stack Overflow will give us a great answer. Yeah, they do. Yes and no to staging. Quit. Do not stage. Search. One of these is split. S. Split the current hunk into smaller hunks. Yes, I would like this split, please. Great. Include that, which is me getting rid of debug. Don't include that. Don't include that. So removed debug for various counts. True. Okay, and let's have another look. So yes, no. So we removed superfluous to owned. Yep. Last one. Removed superfluous cloned. Great, push that up. Thanks, Stack Overflow. And the author of that post, obviously. So what now? I guess let's take stock for a minute. So let's run the game again. It's nice to look at things working. Look at that, glorious, absolutely marvelous. It draws a line. I think the first thing that would be good. Do we have to do this every? Would it be better to do this based on like once a second? Once every 2 seconds? I feel like that would be better rather than just this overheating my processor unnecessarily. Because I know in the camera movement, to smooth out the movement, we use this move factor, which uses this delta time thing. That needs some thought. I think there's something there. There's something there using this delta time. Yeah. So we'll come back to that. This append translation, this bugs me as well. We've just got a -15. So I'm guessing if I put that to -150, and by the way, this is terrible because we've got a magical 150 in the code. We should fix that. If I run this, so it's going to compile and run again. That is going to draw 10 times faster, I guess. And yeah, that's disappeared into the distance. Completely maxed out the rendering. So yeah, let's fix that. It was hard coded, then we created this, didn't we? Lifeform size. But that's a variable within this function of initialize lifeforms within main.rs. So actually, let's create a constant. Public constant lifeform size. Maybe that should be a float. Don't know. Make it into a float. 150. So then how do we use arena width? Do we have to do anything special? No, they're just available. So that means probably do a find and replace on these. This goes away. Find next. So we want to replace. Replacing itself with itself. First of all, oh no, wrong window. First of all, let's check that still runs. Got to wait those 17 seconds. Yeah, still runs. Great. Days. So now if we go into life, -1. Life form size, except that's not true, is it? We can't access life form size yet. We want to include it. And I'm trying to remember the syntax. I think it might be use crate. In fact, it might just be crate. So I think new system. So I think it needs to be crate main. I think this should be crate main. Apparently not. Third resolve, maybe missing crate main. It's fair. It's not a crate. Is it just that? Is that the correct way? Really? That's the way to do things. Okay, good. Ooh, let's do that. Let's see if it runs. And this means quite neatly now we can change the size of these triangles. It'll all just happen. It'll all just change automatically. Quite nice. Well, there we go. We can now draw in a straight line once a frame as we slowly render slower and slower. And I think that's a nice end to this session. Oh, someone's asked a question, sorry. Next time, can I have more quality options? Not everyone can watch at 1080p. Yeah, that is a good question. I'll have a look. So that would be in Streamlabs. I'll have a look and see if it'll let me add multiple options for that. I would have thought Twitch automatically handles that, but possibly not. Not run into this before, but I will endeavour to fix it. So yeah, thanks for watching. You can catch up on these. This will be episode, I think this will, when I release this to YouTube, this will be episode 6. If we don't count that terrible incident with the missing episode, then this will go out as episode 6. Next time, there's a number of things we could do. I'd love to sort out the light, because there isn't any at the moment. Everything is just 100% bright. I'd also like to introduce some real rules. Hang on, I'm going to close this because before we run out of RAM. Yeah, I'd like to introduce some light. I'd like to introduce the actual rules for Game of Life, which, yeah, maybe that's a step or two ahead, but I feel like we're nearly there. And that's the whole point of this, right? Is to make the Game of Life in 3D. Yeah, cool. All right, thanks everyone, and see you next time.